Hey warriors, welcome back to the channel. You ever notice how people treat you completely differently when they think you're struggling? How the same person who returned your calls immediately when you looked successful suddenly goes silent when you appear to need help? How opportunities that seemed available vanish the moment you reveal you're not in a strong position? And here's what's worse. It's not just that they disappear. Some of them start circling. The moment you appear poor, you activate two responses in the people around you: abandonment from those who fear association with failure, and exploitation from those who sense an easy mark. The high-value people, the ones who could actually help you, they go cold. They're busy. They'll circle back. They've ghosted you, not because they're cruel, because humans are hardwired to align with winners and distance from losers. And poor doesn't just mean broke. It means appearing to lack resources, options, power, connections, leverage. Any signal of scarcity triggers the same ancient mechanism: get away from the failing before their failure contaminates you. But the people who stay, they're not staying to help. They're staying to extract. They see vulnerability and they position. They offer opportunities that benefit them disproportionately. They present deals designed to take advantage of your desperation. They're extracting value at exactly the moment you can least afford to have value extracted. You made yourself a target, not intentionally, not maliciously, but you did it. You revealed you were struggling. You admitted you needed help. You showed weakness, and that revelation activated predation. If you're recognizing these signals in your own behavior and starting to see why people have been distancing or exploiting you, subscribe now, because what comes next is the framework for engineering prosperity, perception, even during actual struggle, and it only works if you're willing to deceive strategically for survival. Here's what's actually happening. The world is running a constant calculation on you, and the moment you appear poor, financially, socially, or in terms of options, you become worthless in that calculation to some and prey to others. The same skills, the same intelligence, the same capabilities you had when they were paying attention, none of it matters now, because they're not evaluating your actual value. They're evaluating your apparent status, and right now, your status appears low, so you're either invisible or exploitable. Machiavelli understood something that destroys desperate people. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. And if you appear poor, you'll be treated accordingly, abandoned by those who could help you, exploited by those who stayed. This isn't about fairness, this isn't about morality, this is about survival mechanics. Stay till the end, because I'm about to show you why revealing struggle is strategic suicide, why appearing poor accelerates actual poverty through social abandonment, and how to engineer the perception of prosperity even when you're barely holding on, because that perception is the only thing standing between you and complete social annihilation. Let me show you exactly what happens when you appear poor, not broke necessarily, just perceived as lacking options, leverage, or upward momentum. You're at a networking event. 6 months ago, you attended the same event with a different status. You had a good job, visible success, momentum. People approached you. They wanted to connect. They offered introductions. They asked what you were working on. They saw you as someone worth investing in, someone who might be useful later, someone whose success might rub off on them. Now you're at the same event, but you lost that job. You're freelancing, you're in transition, you're exploring options, and you think people will see past the temporary setback to the same value you had 6 months ago. But they don't, because they're not seeing you, they're seeing signals. And right now, every signal says declining. Your energy is different, more tentative, more eager. Your conversation is different. You're asking for things instead of offering. You're looking for opportunities instead of creating them, and people sense it immediately. Watch what happens. The same people who approached you 6 months ago are now looking past you. They make brief eye contact, offer a polite smile, and move on. They're not rude, they're just not interested, because you're not valuable to them anymore. You can't offer introductions to powerful people. You can't provide opportunities. You can't elevate their status through association. You can only take, and people are hardwired to avoid takers when there's no upside to giving. But there's someone who does approach, someone offering to help. They've got a project that could be perfect for you. They're looking for someone with your skills, and it sounds good. Until you look at the terms. The pay is garbage, the work is exploitative, the arrangement benefits them massively and you minimally. But they're positioning it as an opportunity, as them doing you a favor, because they've calculated that you're desperate enough to take it. And they're right, because when you appear poor, your negotiating power evaporates. People know you need them more than they need you, and they structure everything accordingly. This is the dual mechanism: abandonment from those who could help, exploitation from those who stayed, and both are triggered by the same thing, the perception that you're poor. Not actually poor necessarily, just perceived as lacking options, resources, or leverage. That perception changes everything. It changes how people talk to you. It changes what opportunities they present. It changes whether they return your calls. It changes your value in every social calculation they're running. And here's the part that destroys people. The perception creates the reality. When you appear poor, you're treated poorly. When you're treated poorly, you have fewer opportunities. Fewer opportunities means less money, less success, less status, which makes you appear even poorer, which triggers even more abandonment and exploitation. It's a death spiral. And it starts not with actual poverty, but with appearing poor, with revealing struggle, with showing weakness, with signaling scarcity. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." And here's how that applies. If you cannot be both prosperous and liked, always choose the appearance of prosperity. Being liked while appearing poor gets you pity at best, predation at worst. Being respected for appearing prosperous gets you opportunity, alliance, and leverage. The appearance matters more than the reality, because the appearance determines how you're treated, and treatment determines outcomes. Now let me show you the specific signals that trigger the poor perception, because you're probably sending them without realizing it. These are the markers people use to calculate your status. And every one you display lowers your value in their eyes and activates the abandonment exploitation mechanism. Signal 1. Desperation energy. This is the big one. When you need something, a job, a connection, an opportunity, and you radiate that need, people sense it immediately. It's in your body language, your tone, your eagerness, your willingness to accommodate. You're trying too hard. You're agreeing too quickly. You're too available. And desperation is repulsive, not morally, evolutionarily, because desperation signals scarcity, and scarcity signals decline, and decline signals stay away. So the more you need help, the less help you get. The more you need opportunity, the fewer opportunities appear, because your energy is broadcasting poverty, and poverty triggers distance. Signal 2. Time abundance. When you appear to have unlimited time, when you're always available, always free for calls, always able to meet on their schedule, you're signaling that you're not in demand, that you don't have options, that you're not busy with valuable things. And if you're not busy with valuable things, you're not valuable. Successful people are busy. They have conflicts. They need to schedule weeks out. When you're immediately available, you're advertising that you're not successful, that you're waiting for someone to need you, that you're poor in opportunities, and that perception changes how seriously people take you. Signal 3. Accommodation overflow. When you bend over backward to accommodate others, when you adjust your schedule to theirs, when you take deals on their terms, when you accept conditions without negotiation, you're signaling low leverage. You're showing them that you need them more than they need you, that you're willing to compromise because you can't afford to lose the opportunity, and that willingness broadcasts poverty, poverty of options, poverty of alternatives, and it invites exploitation. Because if you'll accept bad terms now, they know they can offer you worse terms later. You've trained them that you're desperate, and desperation doesn't get better deals, it gets worse ones. Signal 4. Status symbol, absence. Like it or not, people judge status by visible markers, not because they're shallow, because markers are efficient. If you show up to a high-stakes meeting in worn-out clothes, driving a beat-up car, with outdated accessories, you're broadcasting poverty. Maybe you're being authentic. Maybe you don't care about superficial things. Maybe you're investing your money elsewhere. Doesn't matter, because they're not seeing your bank account or your values. They're seeing signals, and the signals say low status, which triggers the calculation, not worth investing in. And that calculation closes doors before you even speak. Signal 5. Scarcity language. The words you use reveal your mindset. When you talk about things you can't afford, opportunities you can't access, people you can't reach, you're advertising limitation. When you talk about needing things, lacking things, struggling with things, you're broadcasting scarcity. And scarcity is contagious. People don't want to be around it. They don't want to think about limitation. They want to be around abundance, possibility, expansion. So the more you talk about what you don't have, the more people distance themselves from you, because you're reminding them of a state they fear falling into themselves. These 5 signals: desperation energy, time abundance, accommodation overflow, status symbol, absence, scarcity language, they're the markers, and every one you display lowers your perceived status, lowers your value in the social calculation. Everyone's constantly running, and triggers the dual mechanism: abandonment from the valuable, exploitation from the predatory. So let's build the counter framework. The strategic deception that prevents the appearance of poverty even when you're struggling. Because you can't always control whether you're actually poor, but you can always control whether you appear poor. And that appearance is what determines whether the world turns against you or continues to invest in you. Layer 1. Abundance projection through scarcity management. This is the foundation. You never reveal scarcity, never. Not of time, not of money, not of options. Even when you're desperate for the opportunity, you act like you're considering it among several options. Even when you have nothing else scheduled, you create scheduling friction. Even when you need the money, you negotiate as if you don't. This isn't lying about facts. This is controlling the perception of your leverage. Here's how this looks in practice. Someone offers you work. You need it desperately. Your bank account is running dry. This is the only opportunity on your horizon. But you don't show that. You say, interesting. Let me check my calendar and get back to you tomorrow. You've just created artificial scarcity. You've signaled that you have other commitments, that you need to evaluate whether this fits, that you're not desperate, and that signal changes how they value you. If you'd said yes immediately, they'd know you're desperate. They'd offer worse terms. They'd extract more value. But because you created space, they're now wondering, does he have other options? Is he actually considering alternatives? And that uncertainty gives you leverage you don't actually have. Layer 2. Strategic unavailability. You make yourself harder to reach, not impossible, harder. You don't respond to messages immediately. You're not always available for calls. You can't meet on short notice. Not because you're actually busy, because you're engineering the perception of demand. Because busy people are valuable people, and valuable people get better treatment. When you're immediately available, you're broadcasting low demand. When you're strategically unavailable, you're broadcasting high value, and people treat high-value people better. They offer better terms. They invest more. They compete for your attention instead of assuming they already have it. Layer 3. Status symbol, curation. You invest strategically in the visible markers that signal status. Not everything, just the things people use to make quick judgments. You can't afford an expensive wardrobe, fine, but you can afford one excellent outfit for important meetings. You can't afford a luxury car, fine, but you can Uber to the meeting so they don't see your car at all. You can't afford expensive accessories, fine, but you can invest in one quality watch, one quality bag. These aren't vanity, they're strategic investments in perception management, because fair or not, people judge your status by visible markers, and those markers open or close doors before you even speak. Layer 4. Association elevation. You strategically manage who you're seen with and what you're associated with. If you're struggling, you don't spend time with other struggling people in public contexts where perception is being formed. Not because you're ashamed of them, because association is transitive. If you're always around people who appear poor, people assume you're poor. If you're around people who appear successful, people assume you're successful. So you strategically position yourself in proximity to success. You attend events where successful people gather. You join communities where high-status people participate, not to use them to be associated with them, because association shapes perception, and perception shapes treatment. Layer 5. Narrative control. You never describe yourself as struggling, transitioning, rebuilding, or in any state that implies decline. You're always working on something interesting, exploring new opportunities, in the middle of a pivot, same reality, different frame. The frame controls perception. When you say you're between jobs, people hear unemployed/poor. When you say you're consulting while evaluating my next move, people hear selective/in demand. Same situation, different perception, and perception determines treatment. So you control the narrative ruthlessly. You frame every situation in terms that signal upward trajectory, selectivity, and options, even when the reality is struggle. These 5 layers: abundance projection, strategic unavailability, status symbol curation, association, elevation, narrative control, they're the armor. They're the perception engineering that prevents the appearance of poverty. And when you implement them correctly, something happens. You're treated as if you're successful, even when you're struggling. And that treatment creates actual opportunities, because people invest in success. They avoid poverty. And if you appear to be the former, you get the benefits that create the reality. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. You're in the same scenario I described earlier. You've lost the job. You're struggling. But this time, you're implementing the framework. You show up to the networking event. But your energy is different. You're not desperate. You're not seeking. You're evaluating. You have the one excellent outfit. You Ubered so nobody saw your car. You're strategically unavailable. You can only stay for an hour because you have another commitment, and you're controlling the narrative. You're consulting while exploring some interesting opportunities. Watch how people respond differently. They don't sense the desperation. They don't get the scarcity signal. What they get is someone who appears to be in demand, who appears to have options, who appears to be successful. And that appearance changes everything. The same people who would have looked past you are now engaging, because you appear valuable. You appear to be someone worth investing in, someone whose success might be useful to them, and that perception creates actual opportunity. Someone approaches with a project, but because you don't appear desperate, the terms are different. They're offering better compensation. They're treating you as a peer, not as someone they're doing a favor for. Because you engineered the perception that you have options, that you're considering multiple things, that you're selective, and that perception gave you leverage you didn't actually have. Fake leverage that created real results. This is the Machiavellian insight. Appearance creates reality. You didn't lie about your situation, you just controlled how it was perceived. You framed struggle as pivot. You engineered unavailability where there was availability. You projected abundance where there was scarcity, and that projection changed how you were treated, which changed the opportunities you received, which changed your actual situation. You faked prosperity until it became real. Machiavelli wrote, "In the actions of all men, and especially of princes, which it is not prudent to challenge, one judges by the result." Translation: people judge by outcomes they can see, not by internal reality they can't. Your struggle is invisible. Your projection is visible. So the projection is what matters. Engineer the right projection, and you engineer the right treatment. Engineer the right treatment, and you engineer actual results. If this framework is showing you how perception engineering creates actual opportunity, how appearing prosperous matters more than being prosperous, hit that like button. It tells me this is landing, and it pushes this to others who are still being honest about their struggles and getting abandoned for it. Now let me show you what happens when you don't do this. When you're authentic about struggle, when you reveal scarcity, when you show weakness, because you need to understand the full cost of appearing poor so you never make this mistake again. You're honest. You tell people you're struggling, that you're worried about money, that opportunities have dried up, that you're stressed about the future, and you think this honesty will create empathy, that people will want to help, that vulnerability will create connection. But here's what actually happens. You've just activated the abandonment exploitation mechanism. The high-value people, the ones with resources, connections, actual ability to help, they start distancing, not dramatically. They just become less available. They respond to messages slower. They're vaguer about meeting up. They stop offering introductions, and you don't understand why. You were honest. You were vulnerable. You thought that would create deeper connection. But what it actually did was signal poverty. And poverty triggers an ancient survival mechanism. Don't get pulled down by the failing. Because on some level, they fear contamination. They fear that association with your decline will affect how others perceive them. They fear that your lack of success will reflect badly on their judgment for associating with you. They fear that helping you will cost them resources with no return. So they distance, not out of cruelty, out of self-protection. And you're left without the people who could actually help you. But some people don't distance. Some people move closer, and you think, finally, allies, people who care, people who help. But watch what they actually do. They offer help that serves them more than you. They present opportunities with exploitative terms. They position themselves to extract value from your vulnerability. They're not bad people necessarily. They're just opportunists. And you appearing poor created the opportunity. They offer you work at below market rates because they know you need it. They ask for favors without reciprocating because they know you're seeking goodwill. They introduce you to people with the implicit message that you're a project they're helping, which lowers your status in the new connection. They're using your revealed poverty as leverage, and you accept it because you appeared poor enough that you don't feel like you have options. This is the death spiral. Appearing poor, abandoned by valuable people, exploited by opportunists, fewer resources, appearing even poorer, more abandonment and exploitation. It feeds on itself, and it accelerates. Every day you spend appearing poor is a day the mechanism is working against you. Every person who learns you're struggling is another person running a calculation that ends with distancing or exploitation. Every signal of scarcity is another data point confirming that you're in decline. And here's the cruelest part. Your honesty about struggle makes the struggle worse. If you'd concealed it, if you'd projected prosperity, you'd have maintained access to the people and opportunities that could have helped you recover. But because you were authentic, because you revealed weakness, you lost that access. You made recovery harder by being honest about needing to recover. That's the Machiavellian reality. Honesty about poverty accelerates poverty. Deception about poverty creates the conditions for prosperity. Now some of you are thinking, but isn't this just lying? Isn't this manipulative? Shouldn't I be authentic? And the answer is, authenticity about poverty is suicide. You're not lying about your capabilities. You're not misrepresenting your value. You're controlling the perception of your current status. You're managing how you appear so that you're treated in ways that serve your recovery rather than accelerate your decline. This isn't about deceiving people into thinking you're rich when you're broke. This is about preventing them from perceiving you as declining when you're rebuilding. This is about controlling signals so you don't trigger abandonment and predation. This is about strategic impression management in a world that judges harshly and quickly based on limited information. And in that world, appearing poor is more dangerous than being poor, because appearing poor triggers social mechanisms that make actual poverty worse and recovery harder. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote about the importance of maintaining the appearance of power even during weakness, about never revealing vulnerability to those who might exploit it, about understanding that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. And he was right. The appearance of prosperity creates opportunities that actual prosperity doesn't even need. The appearance of poverty destroys opportunities that would have created actual prosperity. So you have a choice. You can be authentic about struggle and experience the abandonment exploitation mechanism firsthand, or you can engineer the appearance of prosperity and maintain access to the people and opportunities that serve your actual recovery. One feels honest, the other feels strategic, but the honest path leads to accelerated decline, and the strategic path leads to actual recovery. So which do you choose? Let me give you the implementation protocol, the specific daily practices that maintain the prosperity perception even during actual struggle, because this isn't a one-time deception. This is ongoing perception management. This is a lifestyle until you've recovered and the projection matches reality. Practice 1. Never complain about money. No matter how tight things are, no matter how stressed you are, you never express financial anxiety in any context where perception is being formed. Not in casual conversation, not in professional settings, not on social media, not anywhere someone might be calculating your status. You can have private conversations with trusted people who aren't making status calculations, but in all public contexts, you maintain the projection of financial stability. Practice 2. Strategic visibility management. You control when and where you're visible. If you can't maintain the prosperity projection, if you're doing survival work, if you're in situations that signal poverty, if you're around people who appear poor, you do it invisibly. Nobody sees it, nobody knows. You maintain the public projection of being busy with valuable things, and the survival reality remains private. This isn't shame, this is strategy. Because visibility of poverty accelerates poverty through social mechanisms. Practice 3. Investment in visible status markers. Even when money is tight, you allocate some resources to the signals that matter. The one excellent outfit, the quality accessories, the professional photos, the premium LinkedIn, whatever the visible markers are in your field that people use to make quick status judgments. You can't afford to invest in everything, but you can't afford not to invest in the signals, because those signals determine whether doors open or close. Practice 4. Association curation. You're strategic about who you're publicly associated with. You don't avoid struggling friends, you just don't have them as your primary social visibility. Your public associations are with people who appear successful. Your private compassion is for people who are struggling, but association is transitive, and perception is formed by public association, so you curate it strategically. Practice 5. Narrative consistency. Every time you describe your situation, you use the prosperity signaling frame. You're not unemployed, you're consulting while evaluating opportunities. You're not broke, you're being strategic with capital allocation. You're not desperate, you're selective. Same reality, different frame. And you maintain that frame consistently, because inconsistency reveals the deception. Consistency makes the projection believable. These 5 practices, no money complaints, strategic visibility, status marker investment, association curation, narrative consistency, They're the maintenance protocol. They're what keeps the prosperity perception intact while you're actually rebuilding. And they work, not because they change reality, because they change how reality is perceived. And perception determines treatment, and treatment determines opportunity, and opportunity determines actual outcomes. Do this correctly, and something remarkable happens. While you're struggling privately, you're being treated publicly as if you're successful. And that treatment creates actual opportunities. People introduce you to valuable connections because they think you're worth introducing. People offer you legitimate opportunities because they think you have options. People invest in you because they think you're on an upward trajectory. And those introductions, opportunities, and investments create actual recovery. You faked prosperity until it became real. This is the Machiavellian playbook for surviving poverty without appearing poor. And it's not optional, it's survival. Because the alternative, being honest about struggle, triggers abandonment and exploitation that makes struggle worse. The world doesn't reward honesty about poverty with help. It punishes it with distance and predation. So you don't give the world the opportunity to punish you. You control the signals. You manage the perception. You project prosperity until it's real. Now let me show you the long game. Because this isn't just about surviving a downturn. This is about understanding a fundamental truth of social reality that applies whether you're struggling or successful. The world treats you based on what it thinks you are, not what you actually are. And that means perception management is always relevant, always strategic, always necessary. Even when you're successful, you're managing perception. You're signaling status through visible markers. You're creating scarcity through strategic unavailability. You're controlling narrative through careful framing. You're curating associations through selective visibility. The techniques don't change. What changes is that when you're successful, the projection matches reality. But the projection still comes first. The projection still determines treatment. The projection still shapes opportunity. And here's what most people never learn. The projection can create reality, even when reality doesn't support the projection. You can appear prosperous before you are prosperous. You can appear successful before you achieve success. You can appear to have options before you actually have options. And that appearance creates the treatment, relationships, and opportunities that make the appearance become reality. The fake becomes real through the treatment. The fake receives. This is why people who understand perception engineering recover from setbacks faster than people who don't. It's not that they're more talented, it's not that they work harder, it's that they never appear to be struggling, so they never trigger the abandonment exploitation mechanism. They maintain access to valuable people. They maintain access to quality opportunities. They maintain leverage in negotiations. And that maintained access allows them to rebuild faster than people who honestly revealed struggle and lost access. And this is why people who come from wealth stay wealthy even when they lose money. It's not just that they have connections, it's that they never appear poor even when they are poor. They maintain the signals, they stay in the right spaces, they control the narrative, they project continuity of status, and that projection maintains treatment that creates actual recovery. While people from poverty who achieve success and then lose it, they often appear poor when they lose it, which triggers abandonment, which accelerates decline, which makes recovery nearly impossible. The gap isn't talent. The gap isn't work ethic. The gap is understanding that appearing poor is more dangerous than being poor, and acting accordingly. You can't unsee this now. You can't unknow what you know. The world runs calculations on you constantly. Status calculations, value calculations, investment worthiness calculations, and those calculations are based on signals, not reality, on perception, not truth, on what you appear to be, not what you actually are. And the moment you appear poor, the moment you signal scarcity, limitation, decline, you trigger abandonment from the valuable and exploitation from the predatory. This isn't conspiracy. This isn't cruelty. This is evolutionary psychology. Humans are tribal animals, hardwired to align with success and distance from failure. And those instincts don't turn off in modern contexts. They just operate through different signals: money, status markers, associations, narrative frames. But the mechanism is the same. Appear to be winning, and people cluster around you. Appear to be losing, and people distance themselves. So you control the signals, you manage the perception. You never appear poor, even when you are poor, especially when you are poor, because the appearance of poverty destroys opportunities that would create actual prosperity. And the appearance of prosperity creates opportunities even when prosperity doesn't exist yet. You're not lying. You're strategically managing how reality is perceived so that perception serves your recovery rather than accelerates your decline. Machiavelli knew this. He knew that princes must appear strong even during weakness, that revealing vulnerability invites attack, that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. And he was right. 500 years later, in a completely different context, the same truth holds. When you appear poor, the world turns against you, not out of malice, out of instinct, out of calculation, out of the same tribal mechanisms that kept humans alive for millennia. If you're ready to stop being honest about struggle and start strategically managing perception to maintain access to opportunity during recovery, subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me which practice you're implementing first. Share this with someone who's being authentic about their struggles and getting abandoned for it. So you don't appear poor. You engineer abundance perception. You maintain prosperity signals. You control the narrative. You curate associations. You invest in status markers. You create strategic unavailability, and you do this until the projection becomes reality, until you've recovered, until the fake becomes real. And then you keep doing it, because perception management isn't a crisis response. It's the permanent operating system of anyone who understands how social reality actually works. Welcome to reality. It's brutal, it's transactional, it's based on perception, not merit. But now you know the rules, now you know the game, now you know that appearing poor is the most expensive mistake you can make, and knowing that, truly internalizing it, that's the first step to making sure you never make that mistake again. No matter what your bank account says, no matter how hard things get, you never appear poor. You engineer prosperity. You control perception. You survive through deception until deception becomes truth. That's the Machiavellian way. That's how you win when the world would otherwise turn against you. That's how you prevent social annihilation during actual struggle. Appear prosperous even when you're not, especially when you're not, because appearance is everything.